Welcome everyone. It is now 10:01, so I wanted to go ahead and jump right in and get started here. Thank you all for joining today. My name is Jeanette Popheel. I'm a Senior Industry Specialist here at Bluebeam. I'm calling in here from our headquarters here in Pasadena, and also joining me today from our Chicago office, my colleague Matt Beaumont is here to help answer questions and help me demonstrate a collaborative review process. So for those that might be brand new to Bluebeam Revu, welcome. And those of you who've already gotten started with Bluebeam Revu and want to learn more, thank you for joining today. We're going to go ahead and go through the collaborative review process. But before we do that, I wanted to give just a little bit of background about who we are. So we've been around since about 2002, and we've pushed the boundaries of innovation in developing smart and simple mobile cloud-based markup and collaboration solutions that help to set the standard and for both design and construction professionals worldwide. We built our award-winning software, Bluebeam Revu, and our cloud-based collaboration platform, Bluebeam Studio, to help serve as an essential workflow solution just to connect all of your projects and team members and to increase your productivity while saving you both time and money. You may not know that Bluebeam Revu is actually used by over 1 million design and construction professionals worldwide, including 94% of the top U.S. contracting firm, according to ENR's 2016 data. And there have been over 8 billion collaborative transactions using Bluebeam Studio. And our approach to building software is pretty simple. We partner with our customers to try and learn more about the way that they work and try to identify ways that we can help them get the project done with fewer interruptions and solve common problems in the office and in the field. Sometimes the common data environment seems like a promise from the future. It's a platform that all project teams can use to easily exchange information. It can sound too good to be true. In reality, the best way to get on the same page is to use a digital format that puts everybody on the same page to begin with. The portable document format, better known as the PDF. So design and construction professionals on projects of every size can help increase their efficiency and boost their accuracy by leveraging the power of PDFs to act not just as digital paper, but as digital containers that can hold vast amounts of data, not just site and building plans. One of the little-known facts is PDFs can contain metadata, hyperlinks, bookmarks, file attachments, images, and even 3D model information. The digital container preserves and provides all that information in the context of the drawing, rather than being broken up across emails, Excel spreadsheets, proprietary data formats, or pictures scattered on network drives. Today, though, we're going to highlight a collaborative review process. So Bluebeam Revu Studio is a cloud collaboration tool that allows you to work in a collaborative environment. So now you can do simultaneous reviews on both your submittals, your drawings, perhaps you're doing QA/QC or constructability review. All of these can be done within Bluebeam Studio. Today we're going to highlight a submittal review, but be sure to stay tuned because we are also going to be going over the markup tools and how to add your comments in a studio session. We're also going to be touching upon how to standardize your markups and how to share those standards with your project team members. And last but not least, I'm going to show some additional review features that help you maybe in the process of doing coordination reviews or perhaps wanting to detect changes in your revision. So we're going to be going over both compare and overlay. So I know you guys are all here to see the actual demonstration, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right into review and get started with the markup tools. So as you can see, I'm actually inside of Revu. For those of you that are brand new to the software, just to give you a little brief overview of the interface, today I'm going to be using the command bar along the top, and you'll notice that I can use the tabs to change the tools on my command bar. You'll also notice that there are 3 hidden panels in Revu. One on the left, one on the right, and one on the bottom. The first thing that I want to go over today is how to use some of the markup tools. So I'm just going to open up a submittal here. And in this submittal, I just need to highlight a couple things. So what I'm going to do first is I want to make sure that my interface is customized to my submittal review process. So inside of Revu, you'll notice right now that my interface is pretty clean, pretty simple. But I want to make sure that the tools that I need for my submittal review are right there at my fingertips. So what I'm going to do is go to the View tab, and I'm going to click on the drop-down arrow. See this little bald guy with a bow tie that we lovingly nicknamed Patrick? There's a little drop-down here that we're going to change over to Design Review. These are all profiles that control the interface. Now you'll see a few toolbars have opened up. You'll see that I have a text tool, a pen, a highlighter. I've got some simple tools right here on the right-hand side. Then on the left-hand side, one of those hidden panels just popped out. This is what's known as the tool chest. The tool chest allows you to utilize some of these markup tools that are color-coded based on your role. So perhaps you're an architect who are doing a review. You can utilize these color-coded markup tools. So now anytime somebody sees a blue cloud, they'll know that the architect has identified a need for change. And we also have the engineer, and I have created my own little submittal review tool chest at the bottom. So the first thing that I want to do here is I'm going to mark up a couple things on this lighting submittal. So I need to designate the appropriate lamp for the submittal that I'm going to be sending over for approval. So I'm going to use my highlighter, and I'm just going to go ahead and use the highlight tool. Notice as I hover over text that the cursor automatically selects that text for me. So now that I've highlighted the exact lamp that I want to use, I also want to place a comment here. So I need to place a comment before I submit this to let them know that they need to designate the finish. So I'm going to just say designate, look at that, even does spell check for me. There we go. And then I also want to make sure that I add my submittal cover page to this document. So what I'm going to do now is I want to go ahead and open up my submittal template form. So I have it here open on another tab, and now I need to just fill out the submittal transmittal. So I know that this is transmittal number 105. I'm going to go ahead and just place today's date, and I want to go ahead and make sure that I fill out the submittal package number on here. And one thing that you'll notice is that when I'm filling this out, that I need to make sure that I do my formatting on my date correctly. There we go. Oh, and my year is wrong. There we go. 6/27 and 2017. There we go. Next, I want to make sure I put in the description for my submittal and the due date. I would also want to put in the package number first. I'm going to say 105, and I'm going to go ahead and say lighting. And once I filled this out, it's ready to go. The nice thing about this template here is that I can save this document as a template to reuse over and over again. To do that, you would just go over to the new button with the drop-down list, and I can say Save as Template. So now once I save this document as a template, there we go. Now I can reuse it by just dropping down that list and reuse it over and over again on my submittals. So I'm going to go ahead and put a due date on here. Let's go ahead and say they have until June 31st to review this submittal. So I'm going to make sure I do that again here. There we go, 2017, there we go. Now what I want to do is I want to make sure that I have the appropriate remarks placed in here to let them know what they need to do. So I'm just going to say review, submittal, and I'm going to say designate the finish. Once I'm done with this, I'm able to then send this using Bluebeam Studio Cloud Collaboration Tool, and they can mark up all the comments live in real time. So now that I've got my cover page done, what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'm going to go ahead and place this on my desktop really quickly here. And now I'm going to go ahead and add this to my lighting submittal. To do this, it's really easy. I'm just going to go over to my thumbnails tab right here on the left-hand side, and I'm going to go ahead and say Insert Pages. I'm going to go ahead and browse to my submittal template that I've saved right there on my desktop. There we go. And now I can go ahead and put it in as the first page. So before the first page. There we go. So there is my submittal. It's ready to go. I've already placed my markups in there. Now the last thing I want to do before I get this over to the architect is I'm just going to make sure I put my submittal stamp on here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my markup tab, go to stamp, and choose my submittal stamp. You'll notice there are many default stamps right there in Revu that come straight out of the box. So if I want to go ahead and put my date and time stamp, I can do so here by dragging. But I also want to put my submittal stamp on here. This submittal stamp just indicates that I have reviewed this. And notice it has some JavaScripting in here, so it lets me put the name here. And I'm going to go put the architect name in there. And I'm going to go ahead and say Review Architects. And the submittal number. And it also asks me for the project number. There we go. So notice now it populates with that data because it does have JavaScript, and it lets them know that this is just a review that I have done, but it still needs to have final approval from the design team. So I'm going to go ahead and just save this document here. Now we're ready to start our collaborative review. I want to get this submittal over, and I want to get it reviewed quickly. So rather than having to print and send this out or perhaps email it, I'm going to start what's known as a Bluebeam Studio session. So Studio, like I mentioned before, is our cloud collaboration tool that allows you to take your PDFs, place them in the cloud, and invite your project team members to place their comments on your drawings or your submittals. Today, we're going to go ahead and click on Studio. And if you've never joined Studio before, you'll notice that the Studio panel opens up on the right-hand side. There's a red plug here that lets me know that I'm actually not connected to Studio yet. So if it's the first time you've ever logged into a Studio session, you'll want to click on that red plug. And if you don't have an account and you've never used it before, you'll want to click on the Create Account button. We're not going to ask you for your credit card or anything like that. All you need is just an email, address, and a password. Keep in mind that password has to be at least 8 characters and include a capital letter, a number, and a special character. So it might be a good idea to check the box for remember password so you guys don't have any issues trying to get back into your account. So I'm going to try and remember my password right now and log in. There we go. And here we go. Now that I've logged into Studio, what I want to do is get this session started. So I want to create Start New Session. When I click on New Session, it's going to ask me for the name. For my personal preference as a best practice, I always like to make the session name as descriptive as possible because if you're like me and you have multiple sessions going on at any given time, it's really helpful to be descriptive in that session name. So I'm going to say Submittal 105, but I'm also going to put the topic in there as well, so that way I don't have to go log in to remember what that submittal was about. So I'm going to go ahead and say Add Open Files. There we go. There we go. So I don't need all of these here, so I'm going to get rid of that one. There we go. So I've got my submittal. I just clicked Add Open Files. You can also say Add and browse to the files that you'd like to add to the session. Now down below under Options, these are the options that I'm allowing my coworkers to do or whoever's reviewing the submittal. So I'm allowing that person to do Save As, Print, Place Markups, and use what's known as Markup Alerts, which we'll get to in a minute. But I'm not allowing them to add documents into this session. Now, here's an important part. So if you've drifted away or you're looking at your email, here's an important part, so you might want to pay attention to this. The restrict attendees by email address, this is important. I'm choosing to unrestrict it. What this means is that now whoever receives an invitation to this Studio session can log in. They can also forward this invitation to maybe someone else in their office. So if you have primary contact for one of the managers for the architect, or perhaps it's the principal, but they need a colleague to actually review this submittal, then they can actually forward this invitation and they can still get access to this Studio session. If I use the check mark that says restrict attendees by email address, only the people that I personally invite by entering their email address can actually get into the session. One of the questions that always comes up is, what if you send this Studio session invitation to someone who does not yet have Bluebeam? The answer is it's not a problem at all. At the bottom of the Studio invitation, it'll say, if you do not have a license of Bluebeam Revu, click here to download our free viewer called View, spelled V-U. They can download that free viewer and join that Studio session and place their comments. And last but not least, I always like to recommend using that session expiration date. This helps give a deadline to the people who are joining this studio session. So if I know that the submittal is due back, perhaps let's say Monday, July 3rd, I can also give a time as well. What this means is that that session is going to expire. Those people that you're inviting will no longer be able to join the studio session and get in there. So they have to get their comments back to you on time. They will get reminder emails letting them know that the session is about to expire. So it really helps them get their comments in on time. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Now that I've created the session, it's going to go ahead and upload that file. Now automatically it's going to ask me, who do you want to invite to your studio session? The studio session, there's a few different ways to invite other attendees. The first option is just to simply say copy invitation right here on this button. If I click copy invitation, it's going to copy it so I can paste it in another email. Let's say I'm working in Outlook already. I already have a distribution list saved. I can say copy invitation and paste it right there in my Outlook email. The other option is to click the green plus button and type in somebody's email address manually. I don't know about you guys, but I don't memorize everybody's email address, so this is not my favorite way. My personal favorite is to utilize the address book because then it ties into Outlook and I can invite my team members with my Outlook email. The other thing I always like to point out is this optional message down below. I always like to type in an optional message that lets them know what this session is all about. So in this case, I might say, please review this submittal and return comments, and I'll give it the expiration date by July 1st. And then I might say, I might also type in a note that says, if this is your first time using Studio, please click here for a tutorial video on how to use Bluebeam Studio. And I'll just use a hyperlink from the bluebeam.com website that lets them know a short little tutorial how to use Bluebeam Studio sessions. I find that the more information you give up front in your session invitation, the better likelihood that you'll have somebody getting into the session and getting those comments in on time without having to email you or call you to ask you questions on how this works, especially for the first time. You can invite up to 500 attendees into one studio session. I don't know any customers who've ran into that limit, but I know those project teams can get pretty big, so you can invite as many attendees as you really need to. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I take a look at the attendees list as well. So down here in the attendees, you'll see my colleague Matt Beaumont has joined us in this submittal review. So I, as the contractor, has sent this over to the design team, and Matt is part of that design team, and he's going to go ahead and make some comments in the studio session. What's great about this studio panel here is it lets me see the documents that are within the studio session. So as I hover over, you'll see that I have a thumbnail preview of that file. I'm going to close out of these files so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So when I open up this document that's in the studio session, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to the second page, or I can use the arrows at the bottom to look at this sheet. So now that I'm working in this studio session, I can actually see that Matt is inside the session with me. If I need to add additional attendees, I can always click on the invite button here and invite more attendees. The other thing I wanted to point out to you is down below on the right-hand side, you have a record list. This record keeps track of all of the activity inside the studio session. So it lets me know when somebody added comments, it lets me know when somebody joined the session, and then I can also take a look and see what's going on in the session. If I'm working in the studio session and I really want to see what's going on, I can also use the footprints to say follow attendee. Then I'll be able to see exactly what he's doing on the screen. Today, I know with GoToMeeting, it's a little trickier to do that, so I'm not going to follow today, but I wanted to just point out that feature that you can follow attendees. The other thing I wanted to point out is that at any given time, if you want to change the permissions within a studio session, you can go to Settings, and you'll see here's my expiration date. So if you notice that people aren't entering their comments on time, you can always extend that date of expiration. You can also look under the attendees list and let additional attendees join. And you also have the control to change those permissions. So if you do want to add additional permissions, or perhaps you want to restrict your attendees, you can also do so right here within the session settings. I see that Matt has placed some comments right here on the record. If I click on any of these, you'll see that it jumps to that particular markup. So I'll see that he has designated the lamp position, the finish, and the options. So as I look through the record, I'll see his comments, but I'll also see in the bottom panel here, this is what's known as the markups list, I can also see all of the comments that were placed. Not only do I see my comments, so you'll notice that I placed the designate finish, you'll also see that Matt has placed his comments. One thing to keep in mind when it comes to markups within a studio session, any comments that are placed by a reviewer, anyone in that studio session, they are locked, which means I cannot delete or edit Matt's comments. Same with him, he cannot delete or edit mine. So any comments that are made in a studio session, just keep that in mind that they are locked from other users from editing or deleting those markups. If I have a question or I want to reply to some of the comments here down below, I can do that within the markups list. So if he says verify lead times, I can also reply to that comment just by right-clicking and saying reply. I can type in my comment and say lead time is 4 days. And there it is. Now my comment is tracked right here in the markups list. You'll also see here that not only has Matt added his comments, he's also, if I drag out my studio panel here, we can utilize the status bar. This status bar lets me know what everybody's doing. So if I'm finished with my review, I can say finished, but really I'm really waiting for Matt to see if he is done. So notice next to my name, it says waiting. So now I see that Matt has changed his status to finished. I also see here that my notification tab was just blinking at me, and I see that I've received an alert. What this does is it sends a notification. So Matt has actually placed a markup on the page, and he has sent me an alert. So if I go to my notifications tab, it says Matt Beaumont has alerted you to submittal status. So if I click on that, it takes me to the exact markup, and it sees that, oh, he's alerted me that he's approved this submittal. So he's placed the stamp on the page and he has sent me an alert. I'm going to show you quickly how to do this. So if I place a comment on this PDF, let's say this stamp here. If I right click on the markup and I choose alert attendee, I can go ahead and alert that person. So I'm going to go ahead and place a comment and say alert attendee. So if I go ahead and place a comment here, and let's say I go ahead and type in an arrow and I say verify lamp on here, and I go ahead and right click and I'm going to choose alert attendee. So I'm going to choose who I want to alert, and I can choose any of my groups that I may have set up, but I'm going to choose Matt, and it sends him an alert. So even if he's not in the studio session with me right now, let's say that he has the day off or he's late to work that morning, he's going to get an email that says Jeanette Papil has alerted you to a markup in the studio session with a little thumbnail preview of the exact markup that I'm alerting him about. So it's a great way to communicate with someone that might be offline, or maybe somebody who is within a different office. So you can just send them an alert right within the studio session, and they know exactly what needs to be addressed. Now I can see that Matt has actually responded to that comment. If I look inside my markups list here, I can see that he says confirmed, that is the correct lamp. So I have a collaborative review here, so instead of waiting for emails to go back and forth, we can work within the same studio session. So again, keep in mind you can invite up to 500 attendees, so you can have multiple reviewers working on the exact same submittal. When you're completely finished with your submittal, let's say we've gotten all the comments, we've gotten our stamp, we're ready to go. Now we need to go ahead and close out of the studio session. Keep in mind your sessions can keep going. I know this was a very quick submittal review. We know that some Studio sessions have to go on much longer than this. So perhaps in a QA/QC scenario or constructability review, you can keep these sessions going as long as you need to. So as long as there's activity within 2 weeks, there's no deadline into how long these sessions can go. So as long as somebody's logging in at least once every 2 weeks, this session can keep going as long as you need to. So you can come and go. So if I needed to leave and come back, I would click on leave. But if I know that I'm completely finished with my studio session, I'm going to go ahead and click on finish. The first thing it's going to ask me is, whose markups do you want to include? So do I want to include everyone's markups? So I have everybody checked, so I'm going to save everyone's markups from this session. And next thing it's going to ask is, where do you want to save these files? So if I want to save it in a particular folder, I would go ahead and browse to that folder. So if I want to go ahead and just save these to my desktop here, I can do so. If I don't want to save these files, I would just say do not save files. Now automatically these files are going to remain open unless you choose to check the box that says close files after finishing. Next, I'm going to go ahead and click on Generate Report. This report is sort of like meeting minutes for your studio session. It's going to create a report of all the activity and let me know who was in the session and when, which documents were in the session. So I'm going to go ahead and just click OK. So now what it's doing is it's generating that report for me and it's saving that file. I'm going to go ahead and say OK, and notice that session disappears. It is closed. So now as I look at this file, it contains all of the markups that were made during that studio session. It also includes the report on this page here. So it lets me know all of the attendees, the documents itself, as well as all of the activity that happened within the studio session. So if you want to keep track of when people are getting their comments in, or perhaps somebody comes back and says, hey, where are my comments? You can say, oh, right here in the record, I see them. So again, all of these documents have been saved and the studio session is closed. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about is how to utilize review for perhaps, I know this was a submittal review example, but perhaps you need to do another type of review with drawings. So I'm going to go ahead and switch gears here for a minute, and I'm going to open up a couple drawings. I'm going to show you a couple additional features that might help you with your review process. So what I'm doing here is I'm opening up my File Access tab right here on the left-hand side. And for those of you that may not be utilizing this, this is one of my favorite features in Review. The File Access tab, it actually keeps track of all the recent files that you've had open. So as I look at some of these files and I hover over them, it gives me a nice thumbnail preview, and I don't have to go browse folder after folder to go find them again. So I'm going to go ahead and click open on some of these to open up those files. So notice here in my recents list, they are located. If I want to save these for future use, one of the great handy things about the File Access tab is you can always pin these files and save them for later. So that way, no matter how many files you're opening in a given day, these are saved, the location are pinned, so you can always go back and look at them. So perhaps if I open up 50, 60 files in a day, it's really helpful to have some of these pinned so I can go back to the ones I use regularly. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of the File Access tab here. And you'll notice I have a first floor plan, and then I also have the revised first floor plan. So I hope you guys don't do what I used to do when I was a customer before I worked at Bluebeam. And I used to do this. I used to switch between the two drawings. I'd zoom in, I'd look over here and go, okay, I'm not quite sure what's different. Okay, let me look at this one, and I'd zoom in. There's a much easier way, and let me go ahead and show you what that is. If you go to Document, Comparison, and you choose Compare Documents, this is a great feature that will actually compare the two drawings for you and cloud those changes. So if I go ahead and say compare, and I'm going to choose my original, and then I'm also going to choose then my revised. So it's going to compare the two for me, and it's going to cloud those for me. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK, and watch what it does. It's actually going to cloud the changes. And as I zoom in, you'll notice that the two drawings are now open side by side using what's known as split screen. And as I zoom in, I can actually go ahead and see what the changes are. So now as I look over here at the right, this is my original drawing, you can see that they've added some rooms and closets to that office space here. So now I can see, they didn't cloud those changes. So it's kind of nice to have this just as a quick check to see what's changed. I can also see that they've added some sort of patio cover to the outside of my building, and I can see additional rooms that were added over here on the left-hand side as well. So notice as I'm zooming in and out that the split screen also syncs the two, so I can see the exact same location on both sides of the screen. I'm going to go ahead and unsplit my screen now. So as I click unsplit right here on the bottom left side of my navigation bar, now I can see all the differences here. This file, by the way, is not editing the original drawings that I had. This is a brand new file called difference. So now I can send this out and say, hey, you know what, design team, you guys forgot to cloud a few things. So I can send that over. I'm going to go ahead and show you another example of how you can compare these same two drawings, but in a different way. Anybody that might be familiar with the paper workflow, you might remember those light tables where you take your drawings and overlay them on top of each other on a light table. Or perhaps you've used AutoCAD to overlay drawings on top of each other to see what's different and make sure things are in proper alignment. There's actually a much easier way within Bluebeam Revu that allows you to do that same overlay. In the Document tab, we're going to click on Comparison, but this time we're going to choose Overlay Pages. So I'm going to choose Overlay Pages, and I'm going to add my open files. And notice these are going to be color-coded. So I have both my original drawing and my revised drawing. Then I can designate what color I'd like those two drawings to be. So kind of think of it just like CAD layers, if you will, where they're each on a different layer and they're going to be different colors. So now I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And these two drawings are going to be overlaid directly on top of one another. And now that I see that the red and green, when they're on top of each other, make a nice black color, but as I zoom in, I can see in green all the changes that were made. So you can see that they've added these rooms here. I've also I didn't even see that on the last time, you can see that they've added this area and these rooms over here. So again, it's an easy way to take a look at different drawings on top of one another. The overlay, you can overlay as many files as you need to. So if you want to overlay perhaps the mechanical drawings with the reflected ceiling plan or perhaps the structural sheet, you can overlay each of those on top of each other using the same exact feature. Again, this is under the Document tab. Click on Comparison and choose Overlay Pages. One last thing about the overlay feature that's really nice is that if I go to my Tab Access button on the left top corner, this time we're going to open up the Layers panel, and the Layers tab here allows me to see what my layers are in this drawing. So perhaps I want to go ahead and just see my revised sheet. I can turn off the bottom layer and I can see just the revision 1. Or vice versa. So it's really nice to be able to control exactly what you see. So again, the Layers tab is accessible by going to the Tab Access button and choosing Layers. Last but not least, you can still mark up this drawing as much as you need to. So perhaps you want to go ahead and ask a question or you need to mark this up. This is great for coordination reviews. You can place this file into a studio session and invite the design team or perhaps some of your other team members and have them collaborate on this drawing at the same time. So again, keep in mind that this overlay process is accessible through Document, Comparison, and choose Overlay Pages. One of the things that I often get asked when using the overlay feature is what happens if the two drawings are not the same scale or perhaps your consultants don't exactly place the floor plan on the exact same location. You don't have to worry about that because if you go to Comparison and choose Overlay Pages, let me go ahead and just clear these out. And I add sheets here. Let me go ahead and browse to some new sheets. There's a way to actually align those sheets. So I'm going to show you another option for overlay pages. And when we overlay these pages, I'm going to choose a align points overlay. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this sheet here. Then I'm actually going to add another sheet. And this time when I choose the second sheet, I'm going to actually tell Revu where to align those two sheets with each other because I want to make sure that those two are overlaid in the exact same location. And I like to use grid lines because then I want to make sure that those two grid lines are aligned with each other. So I'm going to go ahead and say align points. and it says choose 3 points on the document for alignment. And I always say it's best to use grid lines because those typically don't change, or at least I hope they don't. And for best results, you want to choose 3 points that aren't super close together for better accuracy. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay. Now, you'll notice as I zoom in here that I can snap to the exact location. So I'm going to pick point 1, point 2, and then I'm going to pick point 3. And as I zoom in here to choose it, you'll notice that it's actually snapping to that grid line intersection. Now it opens up the second document for me, and it lets me know exactly where I need to align my points. So I'm going to go ahead and pick point 1, and here's point 2. And you'll notice that mine are already highlighted. I kind of did a little cheat beforehand just to make it faster so you don't have to watch me choose where my grid lines are. So there's my third one. There we go. And I can say, okay. If I've messed up in my alignment, I can always say clear alignment. I'm going to go ahead and say okay, and it's going to overlay those pages on top of each other just like it did before. So this is a great coordination overlay. So now I've taken my reflected ceiling plan over my first floor plan so I can make sure that everything looks right. And again, that layers tab is still available if I want to turn things on and off. Keep in mind, you guys, if you guys have questions as I'm going, you can always utilize the Q&A panel. I have Matt Beaumont with me, and I also have my colleague Maya over here to help answer your questions. So if you have any questions on any of the features you've seen today, please be sure to use that Q&A panel. Also keep in mind, we are recording this session, so I know we went through things pretty quickly here, but if you guys have questions, we will be posting the recording of this webinar shortly, so you guys can go back and review this all again. I'm going to go ahead and switch gears back here, and I wanted to just go over a couple of other things for you today and share some additional information. So for those that are new to Revu, you might be wondering which version of Revu. There are 3 versions of Revu out there. So there's Revu Standard, Revu CAD, and Revu Extreme. So depending on which features you need on a daily basis, you might want to choose Revu Standard. Now, all of the things that we've shown today, including Studio, the Markup List, the tool chest, all of those are included with Revu Standard. For those that are using AutoCAD, Revit, Navisworks, or perhaps you need 3D PDFs, you might want to look at the Revu CAD version. The third one you might want to look at is Revu Extreme. Now this one is for users out there who might want to utilize some of our automation features. Things like creating forms automatically, or perhaps you need to sign and seal many documents at once. So you might be wanting to use the batch sign and seal feature. So again, remember that Bluebeam Studio is included in all 3 editions of Revu, but if you have any questions of which version is the right one for you, feel free to browse our website at bluebeam.com and you can see a list of all the features included in each edition. And for those of you that might be looking at an enterprise-wide solution for your company, you might want to look into Studio Prime. This allows better control of your use of Studio. It also allows for integrations with other project solutions out there through the use of the Bluebeam Studio API. And I know today we went over a few new features that you may not have been aware of, but I highly recommend checking out all the different training options available. We have a website with free training videos. We also have other webinars just like this one that you guys can always review at your leisure. We do also offer self-paced online training through our Bluebeam University course. And if you would like to have a Bluebeam instructor come in and train you in person or online, feel free to check out bluebeam.com/training for more information. And our Bluebeam community involvement is expanding every single year. We have several local Bluebeam user groups that meet up regularly to help discuss some of the challenges in the industry, talk about how they're utilizing best practices on their projects, and just a lot of tips and tricks and trends. So if you want to learn from your peers and hear it straight from the horse's mouth, you guys can always join a local Bluebeam user group. So if you go to bluebeam.com/communities, check out that website and you can see all the different groups available. Perhaps there's one in your local area that you guys can join. Keep in mind that these Bluebeam user groups are totally free to join and participate in, and every year they get bigger and better, and we add additional user groups across the country. Now, today we went over most of the basic features in terms of collaboration and our studio usage. But please be sure to join us for our next installment of our webinar series, Review for Advanced Collaboration Review. Now, the advanced course is going to be going over a whole new workflow using Bluebeam Studio sessions. And you want to tune in Tuesday, July 25th at 10 a.m., so same time. And you can join that by going to events.bluebeam.com. We're going to be showing again a whole new set of features in that webinar, and again that will be recorded and placed on our website for you guys to review at a later date. If you guys have additional questions, I'm going to hang out here and answer some questions. And if there's anything that you'd like to see again, we have some time that I can wrap up with questions. I have Maya and Matt here answering your questions. So first question is, how do other people without Bluebeam or Studio access my documents again? Perfect. So if you want to, I'll show you here how you can join. So if someone does not have Bluebeam, they can join that studio session by downloading our free product out there called Bluebeam Revu. It's spelled VU. And Bluebeam Revu, it looks almost identical to Bluebeam Revu. And all they need to do is download it from our website. And once they've downloaded Bluebeam Revu, they would create a studio account just like you did. And they would go ahead, let me show you again what that looks like. Let me sign out here. Just like they do in Bluebeam Revu, they would create that account and log into that studio session. If you have sent them an email invitation, there will be a link in that email that lets them join that studio session. So let me show you what that studio session invite would look like. I'm going to go ahead and log back into Studio here. I've entered my password. Let's say I start a new session, and I'm just going to go ahead and add all my open files. Here we go. I got to put a name in there. Let's say this is my studio review, and I say OK. So it's going to start that studio session, and now the next thing it's going to ask is it's going to ask me to overlay or ask me to invite my colleagues to the studio session. So if I want to send out an invitation, again, here's my session invitation. If I copy it and paste it in an email, I can do so, or I can use the green plus button, or again, I can use that address book. So again, keep in mind if they do not have Bluebeam, they would just need to download our free PDF viewer called Bluebeam Revu. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to stick around just for a few more minutes to see if there's any other questions. We're all sitting tight to answer those questions that you may have had. Keep in mind if you guys have questions for us, you can always reach out to us. If you have suggestions for us on how to make the product better, we love to hear your suggestions. Tell us what you'd like to see in Bluebeam Revu by emailing us at suggestions@bluebeam.com. We do read every single suggestion that comes in. We track those suggestions, and that's really how we decide what features get added to Bluebeam Revu year after year. So if there's some feature out there that you say, hey, can Bluebeam do this? Or, hey, it would be really awesome if you guys could do this. Send us that email, suggestions@bluebeam.com. If you guys have questions and you need help from our tech support, you can always reach us as well. Visit bluebeam.com. There's tons of content on there with short tutorial videos, webinars, as well as some of those stamps that I showed you today. You can download some stamps with the JavaScripting. You can also download some additional tool sets that may not be already installed on your version of Revu. So thank you again for joining. I hope you guys enjoyed this webinar. If there's any feedback that you have for us, please let us know. We're going to hang tight just for a few more minutes and make sure that we answer all of your questions. One of the questions that came up is, are there any courses available for document management? The answer is absolutely. We are going to have a document management webinar coming up in July, so please check out bluebeam.com/events. and check out our events calendar for all of the upcoming webinars. Like I mentioned, we are going to have an additional webinar for Advanced Studio Collaborative Review. We will also have a document management webinar coming up as well. So please join our webinars just by going to bluebeam.com/events. Another question that just came through is, can you join a studio session on the iPad? And the answer is yes, absolutely. We do have an iPad app available on the iTunes store. It's $9.99. You can purchase directly through the iTunes store and join that studio session. Another question that came through was regarding the template that we created for the submittal review. And the answer for that is, any document that you have, perhaps you already have a submittal cover page or transmittal page that you may already have, let's say in Word or somewhere else. If I open one, let me go ahead and just give you an example of one. If I open up, let's go ahead and grab one, a good example here. Let's see, so here's my submittals. So here's my submittal template form. It's just a blank form. Any document like this is just a generic PDF form. If you go to the new button up here, there's a little drop down that says Save as Template. That will save it in this template list. Now you'll notice some of these are actually already in review. So if you don't have a submittal form, you can click on this one here, and this can be your brand new submittal form. So you can always use this submittal form for your use. Perhaps you want to put your own company logo, or you want to brand it a little bit. To do that, you would just click on Images and then go browse to an image. So perhaps you already have one in a folder somewhere. You can go ahead and grab that image. The other thing that might help you as well is you can also utilize some of these if you don't want a form. Here's one that just says RFI. This is just an RFI cover sheet. And one of the great things about this, this cover page, I can go ahead and edit this and then again choose Save as Template. So now it'll be my personal branded template. So these are free to use. There's already default inside of the software. You already have it. So again, just remember Save as Template. So it's nice to maybe you have somebody in your office that can set this up and then share it with others and make sure everybody else saves it as their template. So once I say Save as Template, it's going to come through. I can reuse it time after time after time because I know those RFI and submittal templates probably get used pretty often. There's also one in here for field reports and punch as well. So again, you guys can utilize these over and over. And if you ever want to edit any of these, you would see the little edit icon here that lets me edit the template. So now I've got this punch cover page. If I want to add additional items, you'll notice right here the icon next to the title of the sheet lets me know that I'm editing the template. So again, if I want to go ahead and say delete template, or I can also say save as, and I can save that template. So if I edit this punch template perhaps, if I go ahead, maybe perhaps I want to just underline something, I'm just going to go ahead and underline that. There we go. And then I can also add, maybe perhaps I just want to draw a box around. There we go. I've added that box there. Now I'm going to say save. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and close that. Now when I'm done saving this template here, I'm going to save it in my template folder. There we go. I'm going to give it a new name with my name. There we go. Now I can save it. All of this can be reused over and over and over again. So now I have 2 of them because I've saved a new one. If you have any other questions, please use that Q&A panel. I hear my colleague over here typing away to answer all of your questions. Let me see what else is out there and see if I can pick up one of these for her. Will you send a recording of this session to our emails? We are actually going to be posting them live on our website. Give us a few days to do some editing, but they'll be posted on our website. So just check back on our website. Another thing I wanted to mention to you for those that might be brand new to Review and perhaps you want some more content on how to utilize the software, we do also have a webinar called Getting Started with Review. It's a great way to start out with the basics. I know today we kind of covered a specific workflow with submittal reviews, and we also did the compare and overlay, but Getting Started with a Review is a great way to learn more about some of our markup tools and the interface. It's a great beginner's course. So again, those are free. Check out bluebeam.com/events and you can see the calendar of when the next one's coming up. Well, thank you so much for joining. I'll hang out just for a few more minutes. If there's any other questions that you have that didn't get captured today, just hold tight. We will send you an email. Thank you again for joining. I'll give you guys a few more minutes back to your day. Thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate all of you for joining in today. Again, please don't hesitate to reach out with your suggestions at bluebeam.com. If you have any questions, we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.